So I
like
just
Google Maps.
It did.
Like turn left here.
I actually, my son and I are going to create a Google Maps that is like, you know, a brother.
Yeah.
Turn left, man. Well, listen, I just want to welcome everyone real quick to our discussion, because this is going to be a discussion, y'all. And we are not going to do things sort of the old-fashioned way. We're actually going to allow or invite rather everyone who is listening today to ask a question, ask questions. We are not going to be the filter between you and our panelists today. So just know that. Just give us about 20 minutes or so while we get into this discussion, and we will open it up for questions. Unless you have a burning question, then just by all means, either raise your hand or just start talking. Okay? Is that fair, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to read what I wrote because I want to be formal for a second. Okay. Wait, hold on. All right. So I want to thank you all for participating in this very important discussion today. I do hope that everyone has had the chance to view the amazing and heartwarming and gut-wrenching documentary called Circles. And if you haven't, we just received permission to leave that open for viewing for the rest of this week and the weekend. So if you haven't seen Circles, I need y'all to go see it because we want to have more discussions about this. And so I want to welcome and express how grateful we are to have Mr. Cassidy Friedman. That is the last time I will call him Mr. I will call him Cassidy. And Mr. Eric Butler. Eric, I'm going to call you Eric. Yeah. Here with us today. They are the producer, director, and star, because Eric wanted me to make sure I said star, of the documentary Circles, about trauma, about healing, about love, and the tool method that is used in this documentary is the tool of restorative justice. Now, let me just go ahead and get your bios real quick. Mr. Eric Butler is the star or the object of the documentary of Circles, and it chronicles Eric's life experience in a very authentic and raw manner. Eric is also a domestic violence counselor, an educator, an activist, and lead practitioner for restorative justice with the Talking Peace, PEAC, Peace organization. So welcome, Eric. And we also have Cassidy Friedman. He is the director and producer. I think you he's the one responsible for the acclaimed documentary Circles and many other impactful documentaries. He is also the founder of the organization called, I think it's called Stories That Matter.
Stories Matter Media.
Stories Matter Media, which seeks to empower people to create authentic and life-changing stories through uplifting merchandise and impactful stories. So, the formal part is over. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's get right on into this. Man, that was, I watched it twice. I was just telling you, I cried both times thinking it was going to be better. Like I could hear it. I couldn't. So I'm gonna have to watch it again. But Cassidy, tell me about the making of this documentary and talk to me about anything that has changed in you or that you learned while filming this documentary. And Eric, jump in anytime.
Right on. Good opening question.
Yeah, great opening question. Okay, so the making of it, let's see. This was my first feature documentary.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a true labor of love. When you were saying like Cassidy, the director or producer, or what were you? Oh man, I was everything. Like I was shooting, I was sound recording. I did everything up until the edit, because it was so close to me at that point that I needed somebody to come, you know, drown my babies, as they say. Like it's a horrible expression, but it's how it feels. It feels murderous. To shrink down 200 hours of footage into, in this case, 82 minutes. The amount of things that we had to choose to include and that happened during the filming was extremely hard, because Eric's a real man living a real life, and his life, as you could tell from the film, is chock full of drama. And so leaving huge parts out, but trying to tell the truest story that was based on the footage that we were able to actually record. We call it Verite documentary filmmaking. So what that means is you're embedded in scenes as a fly on the wall, where there's no experts interviewed kind of telling you what it all means and giving you like the high level theory, other than Eric himself telling you what it means to him, contextualizing his own experiences. And truly, I think, I mean, he's the expert of his own life. So that is kind of just the approach that we took. What changed for me in making this film was, honestly, like everything changed. This was, and I don't want to say it was changed by the film itself. It was had so much to do with being in relationship with this man. It was the film that gave us the opportunity to be in relationship with each other, where Eric and I would have been really unlikely to intersect in a way where we would have actually gotten to know each other. I mean, just parallel and really opposite lives in so many ways. But restorative justice it gave a common language for me and him, where despite having like completely different life experiences, the language of restorative justice that he spoke, it appealed directly and immediately to me. And that is because I grew up in like a conflict resolution household, I call it. Is like dad is a mediator, mom is a psychotherapist. There wasn't a day that went by that, you know, I wasn't asked to talk about my feelings. And so when I meet this guy, Eric Butler, and he's doing that work of talking about his own feelings first and foremost, modeling, but also encouraging the people that he's around to do the same, I was like, oh my gosh. And not only that, but he was doing it in a place that was considered the lowest performing high school in all of Oakland. I mean, just a factory in the school to prison pipeline. And like, you know, known for its number of fights and kids who were on like it was the last stop before the school district just cleaned its hands of you and said, okay, we tried. And in goes Eric, and he uses these tools, as you call them, that I believe in my heart are missing from too often from mainstream culture, and definitely when people are at risk. It's not, you know, we're responding more with punishment than using tools like restorative justice. He was using it, and the school culture transformed as I'm filming it, and you see it and you feel it through the lives of the students and the teachers and the principal. And so that was my goal. Like my goal was to show what that experience looked like. Mm-hmm. And to tell that story, and to not get into the politics of the criminal justice reform movement, but just tell the lived experience story of one man trying to change the system. And there's no parameters or boundaries on the film, as you can see, because he doesn't clock out from work and get to go home and then show up the next day and have to like put on his game face, because it's deep. It's affecting every facet of his life. His child, you know, his life is fighting for the survival of his people.
And so, you know, that authenticity Thank you, Cassidy. That authenticity, I think, is what you're getting at, right?
Yeah.
As we call keeping it 100, right?
Mhm.
And so, Eric, I want you to sort of answer that question, that same question about, how did the experience of this, of filming this, filming your life, your vulnerabilities, your son, what was that experience like for you?
First and foremost, it woke me up to this idea of race and how it's deeply impacted in our society today. I think that doing this film gave restorative justice an honesty. For me, it gave restorative justice an honesty that restorative justice was missing for a long time, and still is currently missing. The way we made this film, or Cassidy made this film, was a direct disposal of how we as a society should interact with each other. In fact, when Cassidy brought the idea to me about doing this project, which was the first time we had met, my immediate response was hell no. Well, and the way he put it was in such like white man fashion. It was kind of like he was trying to convince me before having the conversation,
Right.
Using flashy words. So what he said was, this is not, he was supposed to be doing a different thing, but in his mind, he wanted to do something else. And it reminded me of the freedom that that white people have, that black people don't have. He had the freedom to change his mind while doing something very important. Now, the woman, what I knew was he was doing work for Miss Davis, who is Angela Davis's sister. And you don't change your mind and do something else when Fanya tells you to do something.
That's right.
And but that wasn't the whole of my response to telling him no. It was the fact that, like he said, we could be no different. He's white, I'm black. I'm funny and charismatic, he's not. My house is clean, his is not. We have all of these things that are so different, and I have a connection with the students now. And it had just occurred to me that restorative justice wasn't what I was taught it was.
Talk about that.
I went to a when Fanya got the idea of having of leading this charge of restorative justice in Oakland. She went and found two of the most charismatic semi-young folks she could find. It was me, and there was another young lady. She made sure it was me, a man and a woman. She made sure they were black, and put us in a school, and gave us a description about what we were going to be doing. But before she did that, she sent us to the Mennonite school in Virginia, where we had to learn restorative practices. And we were learning restorative practice theory from white folks. And it was basically white folks telling black folks how to communicate with other black folks.
Right.
So I immediately knew then that this is just theory. I'm gonna have to do something else. And this restorative justice thing isn't gonna work. But if we rewind a little bit, I had just left one of the most tragic situations I've ever been in, which was Hurricane Katrina, and I needed a job. And so what the job intake, it didn't matter. I got an opportunity to work with Fanya. So next job that I have, I can put that on my resume. And that was basically, as far as the job was concerned, all that I needed to do. When exploring restorative justice, on its face, it looks like, and it's even advertised as such, it looks like a tool that we use to help boys of color figure out their problems. And all those problems are problems of violence. So I immediately knew that this was more about Black boys not fighting in school.
Right.
Right. So how do you do that? You break them up when they have a fight, and you try to have a conversation with them. When it was advertised, it looked like if you look on any brochure from back then, it's always two Black boys that look angry and a white woman in the middle of them looking like she has all the answers. So I had to figure out what the answers was. And I realized quickly that those answers was not going to come from the white woman because she don't have those lived experiences. Right. For a long time, and even now, folks can't even define restorative justice because actually the two words don't make sense together. The restoration of justice, first of all, we have to agree upon what is justice. What is just for me may not be just for you. But here's the funny thing. While having a conversation about it, we talked to everybody and asked them, what is justice? And if we did it right now, folks would say what justice is to them, and nobody will disagree. So my question is, how do we know that all of those things are justice if we've never experienced them? So what I realized early was we was talking about restoring a justice of our imagination. So now we have to imagine a justice, and then we have to make that justice fit into this community. Now, how do we do that? We have to figure out what values we have in common, and then use those values to get the things that we need from our community. So in defining justice, we realize that justice is not having the freedom, justice is having the freedom to exercise your values. If you think about the times when things are most unjust are the times when we're not given the freedom to exercise our values. And I'll give you an example. In the film, it showed a lot of compassion, physical compassion,
yep,
which is a no-no
in higher ed
system, right?
Yeah.
So once you take that away, we already have an unjust situation, because when I'm asking myself, what does this baby need? And if this baby needs to see a Black man that doesn't want anything from her except her to be great, I have to do something. Now the system says I can't do that,
right? Which
is the reason why I couldn't really keep a job for a long term, because I would always get fired. Until I
for building relationships, for giving the person what they needed.
Have to manipulate those relationships,
right,
and build them with the people that are in charge of firing. Hence, Miss Steele. Miss Steele was totally not on board with restorative justice at first, but as we built our relationship, she became the sole purpose why this film even exists.
Really? She seemed very supportive. So you all, how did that change for her? I'm just curious. This wasn't planned.
It's actually a beautiful story. There was when I met Miss Steele, she was new at the school. I had been at the school for a year. The old principal had retired. Then Miss Steele came on. And her first introduction to me was, my name is Miss Steele, and I am the queen of suspensions. So she was telling me in that moment that there is nothing that this restorative justice thing is going to do. Right. I am going to be a top-down solution kind of person. And the best thing that you can do is stay out of my way. And what I noticed was she had a Southern drawl. So now I'm thinking about how do I manipulate this relationship as opposed to like just building a relationship. I need to make her like me some kind of way. So there was a fight that happened near the office. Miss Steele comes out the office and she's upset. She looks confused. She don't know what to do. They're fighting. Teachers are fighting. She's about to suspend everybody. She's suspending teachers and everything. So she's pissed off. And during her rant, I hear her say things like, Lord have mercy. And Jesus Christ. Now, I'm a Southern boy, and I know what those terms mean. It means she's a Christian.
Yep.
And she's hoping that Jesus comes down and help her with the situation. Now, there's only one way to get to Jesus from here, and it's through prayer. So I asked Miss Steele, did she want to pray about it? And of course, she wanted to pray about it because she's a Christian woman from the South. And so I know those things. So now the manipulating process begins. She says yes. Now here's another example about not having the freedom to practice her values. Part of her value system lies in the church. Now the school says you can't pray in schools. But she says I can pray in my office. Now, two things have just happened. I have just started our relationship process and created something to hold over her head if I don't get what I want. I didn't say that to her because she would have kicked me out. But I even led the prayer to let her know that there is some church in me.
Right.
Like, now, I'm not a Christian, but I do know church lingo.
Right.
I know how to start prayer. I know how to pray. I know how to talk. And the way you talk to God in the black church is the way you talk to your father in a black house.
Right.
So there's titles that you have to go through before you can start asking for shit. So I go through all of those titles. Lord of all gods, King of all kings. I do the whole thing. And she's across from me, and she's like, yes, Lord. So she's responding in that black way that we pray. I say something, she appreciates what I say, so she says amen. Or,
amen.
Yes, Lord. Make me know or to encourage me to keep going. So I keep on going. I don't even close my eyes. I'm just looking at her, and in my mind I'm thinking, I got her now. So after that happened, Miss Steele started to come to me for advice. I think that I said something like I asked God to move our flesh out of the way and let him do his job and let you do your job, Lord. And Miss Steele heard that, so she decided that that God sent me to help her create this community. So now that I got her attention, she can hear me now.
Mm-hmm,
and now that we're in a relationship, now you can hear me.
So let me. Can I just want to stop you there because what you just said was very most of all of what you said was very powerful, but the being able to hear you, a relationship, a common bond, a common goal had to be established. And I'm just gonna. This is so powerful that I would like. I had I'm not going to say his name, but I had a faculty member reach out to me and say, Pierre, these students, right? And I'm just going to bring this back. These students, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to reach out to them. They're not responding. I don't want them to drop classes, right? Mm-hmm. And our discussion came about was that, what is your relationship to them? Are you talking their language? They can't hear you. Right. So that establishing that relationship, you call it manipulation. I get what you're saying. I call it just establishing a relationship. I get it.
But manipulation comes when I want something in return.
Right. I got you.
Now, that point that you just made kind of brings us to the reason why this awakening happened for me with creating this film, because it was easy for me to build relationships with the kids, and it's probably because I'm a kid. It's harder for me to build a relationship with people that are not like me, like white folks. So now it has to be put to the test, because this seemingly kind white man has asked me for a solid. Now, what do I get from it? So after I weigh the pros and cons, like what can we get? Like, so I've come to an awakening that I'm doing restorative justice the way nobody else is doing it. Now, if he's who we say he is, we can bring this to the world, and maybe we could change the world on a much larger scale than just in this classroom. So after telling Cassidy no over and over again, one day something happened. And I'll let Cassidy tell you what happened.
What happened?
Well, so even while he was saying no, I kept showing up and kept hanging out with Eric, and Eric is Eric. So you just want to hang out with him. You want to spend, and he's constantly doing these like prompts that come out of nowhere that cause you to self-reflect, and he's just always he's doing it with himself. We're both out loud processors. And so
Cassidy, tell me the prompt he used with you real quick. Tell the audience the prompt he used with you. What do you ask you?
So he says, Cassidy, what's the thing that you're the most ashamed of in your life? Woo. And I told him something, and I didn't cut corners at all. Because I felt safe with him, and I told him, and it's something that truly I've very few people know about me. It's something that's hard for me to talk about. Just thinking about it right now makes me kind of cringe, and I was afraid of. I'm always afraid that I'm going to be judged for this thing. And I told Eric, and he thought about it, and he said to me, if you really want to make this film where you're asking the students and me to all make ourselves vulnerable, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing and to share that story with the students and me, so that they can hear it coming from you, and it's not just coming from them. And it was like that kind of just horrible discomfort of knowing that this was a door that I had to walk through. And that honestly, the terror of doing that, and putting it out there and just not knowing where it's going to land or how it's going to land or who you're going to upset. And that was that formed a connection, which he knew it would. And I knew it would too, most likely, but the only way to get there was to go through that. And it was like, I think it was in the same way that when the way that Eric presents with the students is often shocking to them. It was shocking to the young people that you see, like Mercedes and Damon, to hear me share this guy who sort of like, presents as like, the guy who hides behind the camera and clicks record. And now I'm just like moving the camera out of the way, sitting down and being my honest, very imperfect self. So
when you showed your imperfections, right? That was the door that said, hey, starts building trust, right? And so when
it humanizes him. It humanizes him. Even while listening to Cassidy tell this short, brief story, I heard honesty, safety, trust, and non-judgment. Those are all values that we all share automatically, no matter where you're from. We all want honesty, or we claim to want honesty. We all want safety. We all want trust. We all want our dirty laundry, which is in Cassidy's background, not to be judged. It proves the theory that, so now, how do you get what you need from your community using your values? Now, the value that Cassidy used was openness, vulnerability, which these babies carry with them every day and have to expose it every day. And I was only asking Cassidy to do it for 5 minutes out of his life. That's a fair trade.
Yeah.
And it offers us an opportunity to be deeper in community. Now, because of that, Cassidy and I had some really, really deep conversations that seems to not have anything to do with race. But when we talk about them, they're all about race. For instance, the thing with Trey. When Trey was going to jail, Cassidy was sitting in the back of my car with his camera, getting on my nerves, and he would say something. He said something like, "The judicial system don't know who they're dealing with," because he had developed a liking for me, and it seemed like if I do what he think I'm going to do, they're going to be in trouble. Now, here's the thing. I have wonderful connections. In fact, while Trey was in jail, Angela Davis came to his cell and bought him some books. That's amazing connections.
Yeah.
Now, did that get him out of jail? Nope. And it doesn't matter how much I would have ranted and raved about it, he still wouldn't have got out of jail. In fact, I could have gotten myself put in jail if I acted upon what I wanted to really, really do. If I wanted to do the things that Cassidy said that he would have done if he was in that situation. So now we're talking about what makes us different.
Right.
All right. And why. So now that we have a deeper understanding about each other, we don't have to make assumptions. Now, what happens is when we're not in community, we are in Assumptionsville. And we create those assumptions based on the things, based on things I see on television.
So wait, community. Explain what community is. Because if we're not in community, then we're in assumptions. That means the opposite of that means that we are living in facts, and facts or knowledge is gained by communication. So community must be communication.
Community is definitely communication, and it eventually brings us to a place called relationships.
Woo!
That's where we want to be. We want to be in depth in these relationships. It's easier for you to forgive me. It's easier for you to use the value of forgiveness if we're in a relationship. Think about how many times you had to forgive the person that you love. Think about the people that you know in your life that you have to wonder, why is this person even in my life? That's because you have created a relationship that you wanted. Probably selfishly. It's probably because she's pretty, she got pretty eyes or whatever, but you still selfishly wanted that relationship, and now you have to make excuses about why you have that relationship.
So how did you develop that with students, though? I mean, these are not, you didn't want anything from, well, yes, you did. You wanted the students to succeed. Yes. And I think they saw that. The relationship that you had with a Mercedes tore me a freaking apart. And I have relatives like that, right? Yeah. And how did you begin to have her open up? Talk to me about that, please.
Finding out, and even she said it in the film, she's like, me and Eric have something in common. Now that came from us constantly having conversations as a whole classroom about the things that we have in common. Now, we change those commonalities to those are our values. Those are the values. That's the value system that we live by. Getting what I need based on the story that she told me. She's never told that story before about her being molested. So she had no expectations about what this adult who's in a room that just heard her say, I don't trust men. Now, Kathy said earlier, I will do the shocking shit. So if you don't trust men, let me give you a reason to trust us. Or at least this one. Now, if I can make that happen, I can open up the door for her trust with other men that are just like me, because we're all not the same. And if we can do that, we can recognize her problem and we can do something about the men that aren't like that. Now, and that's where restorative justice becomes work. because now you have to fix what you've exposed. So like you can't just say like here's this wound and then you disappear. So now we have to have conversations about race, and we have to teach what we've just been taught by each other to the world. So we do that, and this is how we do it. Because of our relationship, I've met Cassidy's dad, who does the exact same thing that I do, except he's not as comfortable to watch as I am. He's not as good looking. I've also met Cassidy's wife, and she's a member of my team. I've met his kids. So like not only met them, they're a part of my community.
Your Uncle Eric?
I'm definitely Uncle Eric. I spoke at Cassidy's birthday party. I've been to Cassidy's parents' house. I've been to Cassidy's wife's parents' house, who lives in Philadelphia. These relationships blossom, and now Cassidy's wife and I are teaching restorative justice around the country via Zoom, where we're actually holding healing circles.
Wow.
For people that are having problems with race. We talk a lot about white silence right now. We're doing this thing about we're hosting these white women circle where white women are able to talk about white silence and that kind of thing.
Woo! Wow, I want to be a part of that. But can you there's two things I heard here. I want you, if you could, you all talk about that relationship. You told me a story, Eric, about the work that Mrs. Friedman, Mrs. Cassidy, was doing, both of you all were doing around race, and the drink that you were going to share with, I think it was your daughter, Cassidy?
My son, yeah.
With your son, and then if you could go sort of talk about what circle is and how we can actually live in circle, and our relationships can be guided by the principles of that circle. So in the classroom and in our relationships, please go ahead.
Right on. I think it was after a viewing of one of the like we showed the film somewhere. I don't remember where we were.
I think it was in Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah. It was definitely Oxford, Mississippi. I remember that because I took a picture. I'm a big sweet tea drinker. This isn't cognac. This is sweet tea. And
knew that. I don't know if everyone knew that. Yeah, that's a Southern thing, y'all. That's a Southern thing.
Yeah.
It'll cause diabetes. Just
yeah. I have an addiction too. Like my sweet tea is damn near syrup. The thing is, there was an intimate moment that I shared with Cassidy's son, where he nudges me and he wants to know what I have in my McDonald's cup.
How old was he?
3.
Yeah. Okay. And in Southern fashion, I didn't even think twice. I put the McDonald's cup because he's just mesmerized with McDonald's. When he sees the McDonald's arches and he's like, all right, I want some of that. He doesn't even know what it is. So I give it to him, and Becca kind of freaks out, do like a semi-white woman freak out, where she like springs into action and she's like, no, you can't give this to my baby. And why would you give this to a kid? This is caffeine and sugar.
Right.
And in the moment, she was just thinking about the safety of the kid, of her kid. Now, how is that a race issue? So we had weeks and weeks and weeks of conversations about how is that a race issue. Now, for her to say it's not a race issue, it matters not, because it's about who was harmed. And I felt harmed because I felt like there wasn't trust here. Like you didn't trust that that I wouldn't harm him. And will it harm him, or will he just be kind of antsy for the next 4 hours? As an uncle, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to come to your house, spoil your kids rotten, turn them against you, and leave.
Right.
And that's cross race. That's how it goes in every race.
Yeah.
And for you to halt that from happening means that we're not as close as I thought we were. Now, let me tell you something about Becca. We started a little small community of folks where it was me, these two women of color, Becca, Cassidy's wife, Cassidy's dad, and Cassidy's dad's partner, who's also white. And we're having these conversations for almost 2 years about race and connection and race and all that kind of stuff. And they were deep, and we began to miss each other when we couldn't do it, right? And still right now, we email each other because of COVID. We can't get together and stuff, and we actually miss each other. There was once we were having a conversation, and I asked Cassidy's dad, did he need me? And he thought about it for a second, and he said, no. Now, thing is, I think I kind of broke his heart because I said, that's where our race problem begins, because I absolutely need you. And I couldn't explain why. But here's the thing. Here's what happened. Last March, I had a stroke. I suffered from a stroke. And everybody was all nervous. Like, they get really nervous about my health. So everybody was all nervous. So everybody shows up at the hospital. I wake up out of my hospital bed. Cassidy's father's there. And he says, Eric, you scared me with the stroke thing. And I realized that I need you. Now, here's what we realized together. We realized that we need connection. Now, the reason why we don't think that we do is because we're not connected. But as soon as we start to be connected, we realize that we can't live without each other. We are waiting to fall in love with each other, but nobody's hooking us up. So I think that it's my job to hook everybody up, because once we get hooked up, no matter what our differences are on religion or race, we fall in love with each other. And I think, and I'm not sure, but I think that's the way God intended it to be, because it always happens the same way. If somebody charismatic enough can get us in the room together to have a conversation, we fall in love.
That's right. That's right. So please continue with the getting in the room and the circle part of it, because I would like our participants, and then we're going to open it up shortly for questions, y'all. So start thinking in your head. How can circle? So what is the practice of circle? Talk about that.
Circle is the vehicle that we use to fall in love, kind of like the Chevy that you used to. Never mind. Circle is there's structure to circle, and the reason why there's a structure is to make the conversation easier. Now, what we realize in restorative justice is that structure doesn't work for everybody. So we figure out what structure does. For instance, if we were doing a circle right now, in that traditional sense, we would first have an opening and an introduction, and then we would have a
values round.
Not yet. An icebreaker, something that gets us ready to have the conversation. Then we would have a values round. Then we would talk about whatever it is we're talking about, and then we would close. And guess what? Before we get through with the first round, we would run out of time, because this is such a small space. So, like, we have to reconstruct the circle like we're doing right now. We have to reconstruct the circle to take care of everybody's needs. So, like, I guess y'all thought that everybody needed to hear my voice, and that's why I've been talking a lot. So we have to construct the circle to get everybody in the community with their needs, get their needs met.
And so, thank you for that, Eric. And so the practice of circle is really, the baseline is just to get everyone's needs met, and so that everyone can feel that they have a voice.
Yes.
As well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, and I have 1,000 more questions, but I'd like to get sort of our participants in here. With that, anyone have any needs that need to be met? I want you to make your voice heard by simply unmuting yourself, or Derek, can you unmute them? I don't know. But please chime on in.
To unmute themselves. I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, you guys are so awesome. I love the film. How's Trey doing?
Trey is 22 now,
Is he?
and he's struggling a little bit. But he's struggling trying to figure out what kind of man he wants to be. And it's no different than anybody else in any other father and son relationship. I am the closest thing that Trey has in his life.
Yeah.
In fact, he's coming over tomorrow or something. He's not making very good choices. Well, he's not making the best choices. He's making 22-year-old choices. He's about what you would expect from from my kid, because he's kind of who I was when I was 22.
Yeah. I remember 22. Oh yeah. The thing that struck me, there were so many things that struck me in the film, but when I think about restorative justice, it almost as if you defined it in the moment when you were talking to, I think it was Mercedes. It was a young woman and she was really struggling, and you just reached out to her and said, what do you need? And I just thought, that is it. That is what this is about. What do you need to be healed? I mean, really is the bigger question, right? And I just wanted to tell you that moved me, and it also educated me, because I try to teach about restorative justice, and I'm not sure I had a really good definition. You know, I talk about South Africa and so on, but that's so academic, but you got it down to human level. And it was a really important lesson for me. So thank you.
It's like Pierre said about finding the language that people can hear. Academically, I could talk like that, but those kids will never be able to hear me. And maybe I can talk over your head too. Like maybe and it'll make me look like I know what I'm talking about, but nobody gets me because they can't understand what I'm saying. I think the question about, like, I had a circle once where I asked, where does it hurt? And we would go around in a circle, and I'll just keep passing it around until somebody starts talking. And then when somebody starts talking, I'm not asking you a specific thing, like, where does it hurt? And somebody says, well, it hurts in my community. So it doesn't have to be like a thing. So like, all right, so now that we find out where does it hurt? What is the wound? How big is the wound? And what are the tools we need to fix the wound? Now, here's the thing. When we think about healing wounds, especially large wounds like racism, we think like that's a huge problem, and the tools that we're going to need to heal that problem are not accessible because that wound is so big. But truth is, the tools are already inside of us.
Name them.
Our values.
Name them. Values. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
I have a question, and this goes back to the time when you and Uncle Ted were sitting at the table, and Uncle Ted said that the work is good when the student becomes the teacher.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit further about how the work of restorative justice breaks down the barriers of student and teacher, and more into that work of learning, growing, and restoring.
Question.
All right. Well, okay. It's going to sound like a broken record because it all goes back down to relationships. If you think about who your favorite teacher was of all times, it probably doesn't have anything to do with the subject matter that they taught. And you think about what it is that they did, and then you become that. And I think at a certain point, after having these conversations with teachers constantly, we all want to become the school's favorite teacher. So like you have a whole body of teachers saying, we're going to be the school's favorite teacher. We're going to make it impossible for the kids to be able to pick who's their favorite. We're living in a dreamland. And that's what restorative justice is. We are restoring a justice of our imagination.
Beautiful.
I have a question. Hi, I think the documentary was amazing. I love the whole restorative justice thing. Eric, this is also for Cassidy too. how did you, I know Eric mentioned he had a hard time connecting to you at first, Cassidy, and then you had that connecting moment. How have you been able to keep up with your relationship through the pandemic?
Keep up with our relationship?
Yes.
We don't. I don't want to talk to Cassidy.
No, wait. I called Cassidy.
Yeah. There are things that absolutely connect us. One thing is the babies. Cassidy is the keeper of two of my favorite little white people. That connection is important to me. It's important that they're safe. It's important to me that they're that they're okay, that they're eating and loving. Another thing that Cassidy does, he's not very good at it, but he wants to be good at it. He wants to hold me accountable for my my health. So Cassidy talks about it all the time. All the time, Cassidy will call me and I'll be like, shit, and not answer the phone at all because I don't want to hear anything about am I running, am I walking, and that kind of stuff. Cassidy, if I call Cassidy tomorrow and asked him to go and take a run with me, he will be so excited about the fact that I want to go and run that he would do that. So I think that it's an automatic thing, and maybe he wants me to stay alive for something.
Maybe.
Right on.
It's not, I don't think it's a formula. I mean, it is, honestly, it's been hard to be in touch with everybody all the time, especially when I have two kids. But I'm when I don't see Eric, I miss him. And, especially is what he's talking about with his health. I worry about him all the time. Since his stroke, he's trying to eat healthier than before. And, but I love Eric and I'm not ready for him to die. And I'm really afraid there's not many days that go by where I don't think about his health. And it would deprive me of something huge, and it would deprive the world, frankly, of something huge. Eric is like this powerful light in my life. And my dad is now feels it. My wife has been feeling it for a long, long time. And he feels like family to me. And if I don't see him for a few months, that doesn't go away. It doesn't feel like that diminishes at all. But it's been a hard time, this COVID thing.
I love you too, baby. Don, I think Donna mentioned Uncle Ted, and I think we will be remiss if we didn't tell Uncle Ted's story.
Oh my gosh. Can I start?
Yes.
Okay. So the whole time I was filming Eric in Oakland before he went back to New Orleans, I was asking myself the same question you probably were asking. Where did this man come from? and just thinking, well, he must be holding on secretly to a powerful mentor. But when I would ask him about it, I'd be like, so your dad wasn't in the house? Like, no, dad wasn't around. I'm like, well, and he's like, I was basically raised by my sisters, and my mom, and it never quite felt complete. The picture was never complete until we went to New Orleans, and he said, well, let's go see mom. And I was like, yeah, of course, we're going to go film you seeing mom. And he's like, oh, we got to stop by Uncle Ted's house. And I was like, I didn't know that you had.
It was Curtis' house.
Oh, it was Curtis's house. That's right. We're going to stop by Curtis's house, but I got to see Uncle Ted. And I was like, who's Uncle Ted? You've never mentioned. This is, this guy. And literally what you see in the film is what I saw. This older man walks up to the edge of the van, and Eric changes his demeanor completely. He becomes a little boy. starry-eyed and looking at this man with like just love and admiration. And I was just like, what is the story here? And they just went straight into this relationship, and it became, and they hadn't seen each other for a long time, I think, at that point. They start talking, and I get it like right away. I'm like, okay. I'm like, at that point, I was able to hire a cinematographer. I was hovering over the cinematographer. I was like, don't miss this moment. Do not miss this. And it was immediately apparent to me that Uncle Ted was Eric's Eric, you know, in the same way that he's the mentor for a lot of young kids in Oakland, who's actually, many of whom, and is not in the film, have gone on to become amazing restorative justice practitioners themselves. And they say, hey, remember that time when Uncle Ted goes, remember that time when those camera guys were following us around? And Eric goes like, yeah, they gave me pizza. And then they moved on to the next thing. And I didn't think about it because I was focused on aperture and focus and stuff at that moment. And then I'm going back through the footage with my editor, and she says, well, what cameras were following? I thought you said there was no footage. And I was like, yeah, Eric told me there's no footage of anything pre-Katrina. No footage, no photos. And every time I ask him, it's like this horribly sore subject. Like, what part of Hurricane Katrina destroying everything that I owned and my family owned don't you understand? And I was like, there's just got to be something. Well, I just start, you know, using Google and kind of looking into that time period. And what I find is that ABC News, the national, not the affiliate in New Orleans, did an investigative feature piece profiling Uncle Ted and Eric's relationship. And it was called The Lost Generation. And in it, ABC had been holding on to 6 hours of undigitized footage that was sitting in their vault in New York City, and nobody had seen it. And they charged me an arm and a leg just to convert it to digital. But within it was footage of Eric and Uncle Ted fishing on the side of the Mississippi River. Endless interview hours where you see this man who was in love with this boy, and this boy who was in love with this man. And they had this incredibly intimate relationship that changed Eric's life.
That was real footage.
That was real footage.
What we saw in the movie was you as a young man with Uncle Ted. Wow, I didn't know that.
At the same age, Eric is about 16 in that. He's the same age that the Trey is. Yeah. And so initially the film was called Circles because an early cut of the film, it was Eric facilitating a lot of circles. But you notice in the film, a lot of what Eric does is not actually sitting in circle. A lot of it is relationship building that's one-on-one or one-on-two in the hallways and the breezeways. And so I was going to dump the title until we met Uncle Ted. And then I realized, I'm like, this isn't circles in the sense of restorative justice circles. This is timeline. The time doesn't pass in linear fashion. It's cyclical. And you have Uncle Ted handing down to Eric, and then Eric handing down to the young people he's working with in Oakland, and how powerful the ripples are when one man decides to play that role for one young man.
Yeah. And I think that at this moment, that's the only part of the film that kind of gets me choked up. Like every time I see Uncle Ted, and I think about that time that era of time that I grew up in, which was like the late 80s and the early 90s, and the crack epidemic was hitting us so hard, especially in my neighborhood. And I remember being that young and wanting to sell drugs so bad. And there was friends that wouldn't allow me to do it because they thought I had a career in football. There was also, I looked up to my uncle. And then there's this amazing man that comes in my life that works for the Urban League. And he was technically getting kids from these impoverished areas and not really training us to do anything, just spending time with us, like kind of being a big brother. And those moments that I spent with him which were most of the time amazingly boring moments. Like Uncle Ted was a man that did stuff that I didn't do. Uncle Ted had a boat and he fished. I had never been fishing in my life. But one thing that he did, that he took me to Alabama and we participated in a protest. It was a busing strike. And I had no idea about what was going on. And it was a real well, we had to link arms and make sure that the police didn't drag us away. And that was so exciting to me. Plus, I got to leave the bricks of the projects for a week out of the summer to go to this foreign place and hang out with other kids my age and have serious conversations and dialogue about important things that was happening around us that I would not have otherwise had an opportunity to experience, because in New Orleans, education sucks, and we just didn't have those kind of conversations.
And just to add to that, even deeper research, it turns out that Eric he kind of just alluded to this. There are many other young people like Eric that Ted had a similar relationship with, as special as it was for Eric and for Ted. And there's another film that could be made about all these incredible people and what they've gone on to do. There are environmental activists and environmental advocate lawyers and professors, civil rights heroes. The person who founded the Me Too movement was a disciple of Uncle Ted. And they've gone all over the country thanks to Hurricane Katrina dispersing them. If you were to collect all of their stories, you could have 20 more feature films.
Wow.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yeah.
It's for both of you guys. What were some of the most memorable moments during this whole documentary process?
I don't think anyone's ever asked that question before.
No, I don't think so either. That's interesting.
Who asked it? What's your name?
I'm Michelle.
All right, she's getting extra credit.
Yeah.
Michelle, are you thinking on or off camera?
Both, yeah.
I got one. There was a time Cassidy came home with me, like to my house in Oakland, and I lived right around the corner from the school. And the school was it's not the best neighborhood. And there's a fight happening with this girl. And Cassidy pulls out his camera. And the girl notices that Cassidy is filming something. It doesn't matter what he just pulls out the camera. And she comes downstairs and she stops the fight that she's currently in to engage with Cassidy. And she's threatening to break his equipment. And I just sat back and watched, like I'm not gonna be able to do anything for you. I just sat back and watched Cassidy try to weasel himself out of this situation. And what I noticed, like under pressure, well, he probably needed a conflict mediation. But I wasn't getting into that. And they had he just was just pleading and trying to convince this young woman that he wasn't filming her, that he wouldn't use anything that, or he wouldn't use what he had already filmed. And I'm like, yes, he will.
Eric, this is a perfect example, and then I'll let you answer too, Cassidy. Thank you for that, Eric, because you and I had the same look in our eye. This is an example of, I hate this term, but I'm gonna say it, white privilege.
Yeah.
Where you can think you can go into a total different area and whip out the camera. Now, Cassidy, I know that there was not anything that you were negative but you can't do that you can't do that.
No.
Maybe you can do that where you're from, but you can't. Right. But go ahead.
Well,
I think it's more than just white privilege, though. I think that I do think it's white privilege, but it's also the background that Cassidy comes from in his investigative reporter thing. Like, he has to catch everything. Now, there's been times where Cassidy has been filming me where I didn't necessarily feel like it. He would call me on the phone and say, well, I'm coming to watch you brush your teeth. Like, dude, come on, man, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, I'm on my way over there because he needs that shot. And I've already brushed my teeth, but I re-brushed my teeth.
Yeah.
So Cassidy's been cussed out quite a few times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, the fact that Eric hasn't killed me is just shocking to me. I mean, because the amount of intrusion that I've been doing in his life, it's absurd. It's absurd how much he. I mean, I think to when Eric was sitting in circle, and his cell phone rings. And he answers it, and he has a wireless lavalier on his shirt. So when he steps out of circle, I track him with a camera, and it's Trey calling from jail. At that moment, if I'm Eric, I'm like, cut the camera, the project is over. But the thing is Eric didn't do that. And that was really eye-opening for me, because I think that in my mind, I was thinking this is a film about Eric's work. And when he answered his cell phone, I was like, who answers their cell phone when you're in this intimate circle space? But like, real life doesn't stop for circles. And when Eric allowed me to follow him and Trey and to tell that whole story, where he went from being this, he's like the golden hands of the restorative justice movement. He's so adept. He's so smooth. He just always seems to know what next step to take in the most impossible, chaotic situations. He's always has an answer, but with his child, he doesn't. When it came to his own child, he didn't. And the vulnerability quotient went up at that moment. He was already making himself vulnerable, sharing with Mercedes and the camera what had happened to him when he was young and in church. But to allow the camera and me into his life story as he was losing control over his son. His son was being taken away from him, grounded up in a system that he knew would not ever have the best interests of his son in his heart. And he had no idea how this was going to end, but everything he'd ever seen in his life was, this is going to go terribly. That level of honesty, and not sort of, I think at least the way I was raised is we do a job and then we go home to our lives. There's none of that. And that was, I think, where my respect and my when I understood who he really is and what he's really about, that is when I understood. I'm like, wow, for this man, there's no limit. This is not a job. Restorative justice work with other people's kids is the same as trying to be the best father you can be. It's about showing up and not looking for the quick fix, and seeing people as people and not as students and teachers, administrators. And when do we really do that? We're always putting people in boxes. And I've really been, I think, when the first question you asked me, Pierre, was how it's changed me. All of the changes stem from the relationship I have with Eric. All of the changes in my perception of the place that I live in. Like, I don't think we can start to change our consciousness until we start to widen the net of our relationships. Because until you feel someone and feel their story, they're just another person to you.
And because Trey is my son, there's a different kind of love, I guess. So you don't see the same interactions with my son that you see with the other kids. They're completely different relationships. And one thing that kind of strikes me as odd is we've had these conversations with probably 100 different groups of people, and nobody ever says what to me is obviously clear, that there were points where I contradict myself in the movement on film, and nobody ever says it. I don't know if it's because nobody wants to hold me accountable, but I wish those things would come up, like how I didn't treat Trey with the gentle hand of restorative justice that I did with the other kids. And neither did I treat Ramon restoratively.
Now, Eric, we can talk about, I want you to talk more about that. I thought Ramon's issues, I don't know what the issues were, but Ramon, it seemed to me that in the movie, in the documentary, he was using someone and he did not want to participate in a healing event, right? Or he wasn't interested. So talk to me about the limits of restorative justice with Ramon.
Ramon couldn't hear me. I wasn't speaking Ramon's language.
Got it.
It sounded to Ramon like every Black man that thinks that they have the answers, that spew out this rhetoric about what he needs to do and pointing out all of his faults. Even in the film, like when I'm sitting right next to him, I'm talking about how he leaves school every day.
Yeah.
And to compound that is like, I'm like, all right, so not only are you giving yourself a disservice, you're harming me. So now this conversation becomes about me rather than him. And there was a part where I played an intricate part in him being kicked out of school. And the way I performed, and that was a performance. And we often bring our performers to our relationships. And that was a performance. I said some flashy shit that I probably heard on television. I think I used the phrase, "not on my watch." I don't talk like that in real life. Yeah, I definitely said that. Like, I was like, he's getting kicked out of school. And I said he could thrive or not thrive, which makes me sound like all of the other assholes in his life. And I was like, he's not gonna do what and I said Ramon was here for a business.
That's what it was.
Yeah, he never went to first or second period. Yeah. And I'm not gonna put up with that on my watch. And there was a kid in the background mocked it. I don't know if anybody caught it, but there's a kid that says, "not on my watch." And the reason why that kid mocked me is because I had never talked to him that way. So why does Ramon get treated differently? And that never occurred to me. And here's the selfishness. It never occurred to me until how horrible I treated him. And I'm using the word horrible. And it was horrible what I did. And it occurred to me after the movie's done, after years have passed. Ramon was murdered like 3 days after Christmas, like 3 Christmases ago. And right before the film came out. And we had to, out of respect, Cassidy and I decided that we would hold a screening for his mother before we started touring. And for his mother to hear me say that her son wasn't good enough made me have to rethink like this stuff that I'm doing. Like, of course he's good enough. And if Ramon can't hear me, it's not Ramon's problem. It's my problem. I need to fix the way I talk, and I might not be the person that Ramon needs to talk to. So I need to find who has the voice that Ramon can hear. But what I did was the complete opposite of what I said I'd do.
Wow, Eric.
I was able to apologize, and that's a part of the values that keep us together. I apologized to Ramon's mother. Ramon's mother, and this was like days before Ramon's funeral. Ramon's mother held me in her arms, and she whispered in my ear, to stop. She wanted me to stop calling my son bruh. That was it. Because throughout the film, I call Trey bruh. I mean, I call everybody that, like brother. He's like, he is your son, not your brother.
Ah, right.
That's what she took out of the film, and she did what a lot of African American mothers do. She lessened my harm for me to make me feel comfortable in the moment. She said something like, Ramon was hard to deal with. I understand. And that's it's the same cycle that we put our kids through, and I was wrong for that. Now, there is no buts. There's no buts. There's no way I can go back and fix that. So what I do is I make sure I learn from those mistakes. And in this movement, however long I get to participate in this movement, I guarantee that all will mean all. It will be every last kid that I can touch, they're getting touched. Or I'm stumbling in that direction.
At least you're heading there, Eric. Thank you for being vulnerable. I have another question, but it's not about me. Participants, are there any more? We have about 15 minutes left.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is a question for not only Mr. Butler and Mr. Friedman, but Mr. Morton. Please answer if you're interested. You would call yourselves inspirations for some, correct? With that being like those who would inspire others to do better in their lives, correct?
Sure.
I hope so.
With that being said, what are some tools or things, not only as a white man in Mr. Friedman's perspective, but as a black man in your guys' perspective, that can be used to help not only diffuse but to connect those between those who are of like the white ethnicity and the black ethnicity, to have them come together and look for like a brighter future. I asked this because I have a really stupid story that goes along with it, where I was on Xbox with some kid who was 17 from another state, and I was able to touch him just by telling him a story of my football career and how I got seriously hurt for it, and then had to give that up to do other things. But he was struggling in school, so I had the conversation with him, saying that like you can't rely on sports the entire time. Your parents are going to be looking forward for you to be able to go to college and stuff like that, and it really hit home for him. But then there's some people who would rather just make it us versus them. And then if it's not that way, then someone is taking either a white privilege or some type of stance, depending on wherever they are at that moment. What can be done to help either prevent those situations from happening, or if they do happen, find a way to find a common resolution point? I know you guys have experienced numerous different types of people from numerous different types of backgrounds. So I like to call you guys experts in this type of thing as of right now. So what can be done?
In a lot of ways, I think in a lot of ways you've answered your own question. By with your story is telling your story. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes the story that you pick ain't the story that need to be told. So you tell another story until we can connect based on our stories. That story about I don't know who edited the film, but there's a lot of stuff that happened. And based on what story Cassidy decides to tell is going to touch those people. I was shocked. There was a whole like mock funeral almost seemed like for me after I was shot, because people thought I might die, or people talked about why, what would have happened if I would have died, how they would have felt. Trying to find your story, try to find a story that connects with the person or people you're trying to be in relationships with. But relationship being the key to being able to have these awesome conversations.
Thank you.
I would also just add that I think, especially like if you have a social justice type of impulse, that you get it in your mind that like you have charity work or fixing. You got to go out there and help people and like fix them, and like what can I do to create a connection so that I can help them or whatever. And I think like if you watch Circles, like one of my favorite moments is when is right at the beginning where Eric is trying to build a relationship with Mercedes, and he says, "Can I help you with that?" And she says, "No." He doesn't turn his back, say, "Oh, I tried, I failed." He said he just reaffirms the relationship and that he's not going anywhere. And I think right now, people are experiencing a lot of social isolation. I know I am. And it's not always just what you say. That sometimes it's just you showing up as an ear, showing that you care and that you're there to listen. You might be the only person that is listening to that person. And in Mercedes' case, that I think that you could safely say he was the only person who didn't want something from her, wasn't trying to get something from her, and was showing consistency and care. And so the next scene with Mercedes comes seemingly out of nowhere. She drops this bomb on him out of nowhere. Like what the conversation is like, not about that. And she out of nowhere talks about the sexual harm that she endured. Like why did she decide to do that? Why do that with Eric? Why do that with a man? There are so many things that if you just look at that scene on its own merits, it makes no sense. But I absolutely believe that it was Eric saying, okay, but can we just keep talking? And she says, yeah, we can do that. That to me, that's the restorative justice. The payoff is the circle, but the work is the relationship building. And it's not thinking, oh, like, and so many people in the restorative justice movement, they're not aware of the way that they're interacting, the way that they're carrying themselves. They're just trying to hustle until they can get you into circle and fix you. It's never going to work. That's never going to work. And so if you can try to be like, and don't even worry about that kid who lives far away, like, or just thinking that everybody at the college has got it made. Like, I guarantee your friends in the dorm, they need you too. And just thinking all the time, how can I show up better? And where's the common ground between this person who seems so different from me and me? Where's the we? And don't ever say they or you, because that's where you start to lose them. That's where you're creating a they.
That's why I want a clarification, because like a lot of people will like based on what I've seen is a lot of people will try to make it in that situation, but like at the end of the day, we're not trying to, in this day of age, we're trying to make a future where it's not like divided. We want to be able to come together and find common ground between one another. And there's just those people who just refuse to do that because they feel like not like their cause is more important, but their cause is the now. So now we are trying to fix and come together. They feel like their thing needs to be changed now instead of like having the we come together. We want the social justice of how black individuals are being treated now. Yes, it's a big deal, but we want that alongside the coming together, and finding that ground is hard to find. So like how listening to how you want to to tell your story and to pick that story per individual is like really good to hear. So thank you for your speaking.
Right on.
That was a very good question. Who was that who spoke, please?
Steve Larkin.
Oh, all right. Good voice. Keep your voice going. I want to comment on that briefly. Everything that they said, I probably don't have much more to say to that, but I think that being knowing how to be authentic, and what that means is the work that we do for ourselves, knowing what our own stories are, and love. It's all about love. Every single, to me, the commonality in everybody is everybody wants to be loved.
Yes.
Everybody wants to be loved.
Yes.
We just got to ask other people, in what way do you need to be loved? And they'll tell you eventually. So being authentic, doing the work on yourself. I think every social justice platform, no matter if it's women's rights, civil rights, immigrant rights, stop bombing Darfur, all of it's the same darn thing. It's about treating people with love, respect, dignity, value. So anyway, that's my take on it.
I'm glad you just spewed out all of those values, and you made the commonality, like we all need love. Now we think about the things that we need and our values, they're parallel. They're the exact same things. Our values, things that we value, and the things that we need are parallel. So it's not hard work. Like I said, the work is inside of you already. You can't drown out hate with hate. You're gonna have to use another tool, and that tool happens to be love. Now, with love is a big thing. With love comes humility, understanding, and all that other stuff that you got to work on. You have to have the values that Jesus had, and recognize what those things are. Respect. You have to and values like respect. We have to talk about what does that mean to us, because it's the number one cause of everything. Like, the reason why I love you is because you respected me.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you did because you don't know what respect means to me.
Yep.
So you either have a conversation about what is respecting you, because I want to be able to respect you. Forgiveness is a big one. What does it mean to forgive? And forgiving yourself. The problem that I have having the race conversation is usually with white men, because white men do not like to be called racist. And we have to start somewhere. And the place that we start is recognizing the fact that you are a racist. Now, I didn't say you were an asshole. I said that you are a racist. Now, being a racist only means that you are an expert at race. And an expert means you're somebody that can benefit from your race. The prefix is the prefix it only means, what's a pianist? Somebody that can benefit from playing a piano. So what's a racist? Somebody that can benefit from their race. And as soon as you get that part, you can start working on how does that make others around you feel uncomfortable. I wish I could be a racist. I wish I could. I wish I had the privilege of talking to the police any kind of way I want to. I wish. We should all be striving to get to a place to where we all could benefit from the thing that we are. I don't benefit from being black unless all of y'all, unless there's a pickup game.
Look,
wrong, because I'm 46 years old, and that's not happening anymore.
I ain't even gonna touch that. Wow. Listen, Eric, my brother, thank you. I was gonna give you a hard time. I quit smoking the day I got to New Hampshire, which was July 1st of 2019.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Eric, when did you quit, my brother?
When? Just now.
I love you. I love you.
I love you back.
Thank you, Cassidy. Thank you, my brother. This was Cassidy and I met, and then Cassidy introduced me to Eric. For everyone, I was looking on LinkedIn, which is my job, right? I look on LinkedIn. I try to connect with people for employment and things like that. I ran across Cassidy, and it wasn't even for a job. I wanted you to come and talk to our students about how to create stories and own their own stories. And then you started talking about, man, there's more to this than, right? You got to meet this brother Eric over here who can really tell you why a story is important. So I want to say thank you, Cassidy, for making those connections, for making circles, for bringing into the public sphere a conversation about how we have conversations that are effective to creating and improving relationships. Look, thank you so much, everyone. We're out of time. I hope that you all have been blessed and aided by all this. And that's it, y'all. Thank you so much, Cassidy.
Hold on. I just gotta say, Franklin Pierce, you are so lucky to have Pierre. I have been interacting with this man here and there, and the way he shows up is so unusual. He is such an exceptional, caring person. He is 100% in on everything he does. I don't know what he puts in his coffee in the morning to make it so that he's able to show up like this. But I mean, truly, like Pierre, you are an incredible person, and we are so lucky that you connected us to the community of your university. Because my next film is about Eric going to Franklin Pierce and prompting a whole conversation that.
Wait, I got that? Are we recording this? Eric is coming on.
We will be. We will be.
I'm coming.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Cassidy. Eric, I love you, brother. Y'all take care, and we'll talk, okay?
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.